The much anticipated sequel to X-Men the Animated Series, X-Men 97, just dropped the first 2 episodes, and they were nothing short of amazing with pure nostalgia. What's going on, Marvelites? I'm Joe, and I'm gonna break down and review the first 2 episodes of X-Men 97. First and foremost, let's talk about the thing that everyone wanted, and that is the intro song, We Are Back, Baby, and it is just as good as the original. And even the beginning intro is pretty much exactly the same with obviously updated animation, and now that we have 2 new team members to the X-Men, Bishop and Morph, their sequences were also added to that intro, and it was really cool to see them added onto the team. And we even got a little bit of background into Morph's background being kind of manipulated by Mr. Sinister, and we can see that he was a little worried during that. And knowing that Mr. Sinister is going to be the big bad in this, it will be interesting to see how that relationship plays out in future episodes. Now, this first episode was basically an ode to the original pilot for X-Men the Animated Series, where in that pilot episode where we saw a young Jubilee, a mutant who really didn't understand her powers, was saved by the X-Men after being attacked by Sentinels at the local mall. And now in this episode, we have a young man, Roberto da Costa, who was kidnapped by the Friends of Humanity, who now have Sentinel tech at their disposal. And just from the beginning of this episode, the updated animation is amazing. It's still, from my understanding, is still mainly hand-drawn. Of course, there are some additions to computer generation and computer graphics that have been added and obviously updated from the past 30 years that they're now able to take advantage of. And even with that, though, it still has that pure nostalgic look. And I think now with some of this updated animation, some of the coolest things that I saw in this first episode, especially when they go to rescue Bobby from the Friends of Humanity, we get to see Cyclops in particular use some of his powers in a way that I have never seen and I don't remember or recall from the original animated series, where he's using his blast to help him land falling from the sky, as well as being able to push himself around a room and change his location to help avoid enemies. And even in that first action sequence where they're rescuing Bobby from Friends of Humanity, when they finally call on Storm to come on in, just like absolute spine tingles as she comes in and just takes down the Friends of Humanity. Just awesome, and so cool to see the X-Men working together as a team. After the X-Men rescue Bobby from the Friends of Humanity, they know that the Friends of Humanity have Sentinel tech on their hands. However, they're not necessarily associated with Bolivar Trask, the creator of the Sentinels, and now he's been missing, or at least gone, for the past few years, and their goal is to go ahead and track him down, especially given the fact that they thought that they destroyed the Master Mold in the original animated series. Once they finally track down Trask, they go ahead and find him, and we're in for another amazing action sequence as the X-Men just go on and take handfuls of Sentinels. And again, it comes down to Storm being able to save the day and destroy all the Sentinels. But ultimately, we get to see that awesome preview that we saw a few weeks ago with Gambit basically powering up Wolverine's claws, as well as the help from Morph turning into the Blob to take down what is appearing to be another Master Mold. And speaking of Morph, I think it was really cool to see him and how he's being used in this first episode. We haven't delved much into Morph. We do see his buddy-like relationship with Wolverine, but they're really utilizing him to use his shape-shifting powers to basically create cameos in this first episode. We see Archangel, we also see the Blob, and even in the next episode, we see him turn into Colossus, Psylocke, and Sabretooth. So I think that's a really interesting and a cool way that they're bringing in cameos of other mutants that are well-known and well-liked without actually bringing them in necessarily as a character. Jean, as we saw in one of the previews, if you were aware, is pregnant, and Scott is basically grappling with his vision of leading the X-Men now that Xavier is gone. However, Jean doesn't necessarily want to stay around because she doesn't know how to deal with her baby being a mutant and doesn't really necessarily want him to be brought up in this kind of environment. So she really wants her and Scott to leave the X-Men so that they can go ahead and raise a family. And again, Cyclops is just grappling with what he should actually be doing in this situation because he feels it is up to him to help lead the X-Men and carry on Xavier's vision. However, that all gets put to the test pretty much at the end of this episode as Magneto appears and we see him in Charles's office with Charles's last will and testament stating that everything that Charles owns is now basically under the control of Magneto, with the entire X-Men team being like, what? Why Magneto? That pretty much brings us right into episode 2, titled Mutant Liberation Begins. We see a scene where a Ferris wheel is basically falling apart and a firefighter is about to save this young person, and the Ferris wheel continues to fall apart and out of nowhere gets to be put back together with the help of Magneto. And this is basically showing that Magneto is making up for his old ways, given the fact that Charles has left him in charge to carry on his vision. With that scene, of course, being aired on the news, it has attracted international attention, and we see various glimpses of other people preparing because they're not very happy that the mutants are helping and trying to live in this cohesive world. Now with Magneto out and about and leading the X-Men, that has led people to know exactly where he is, where we see a scene with multiple helicopters coming in with Dr. Valerie Cooper leading the way, who has been somewhat of a liaison between the UN and the X-Men and somewhat friends, has basically come to arrest Magneto, and he's basically ready and willing to not go. However, after a short conversation with Rogue, after her saying that she wasn't necessarily accepted by the X-Men initially because of her past doings, with Magneto basically going under the same, it's going to be best for him to gain their trust so that he can lead them by just doing things the correct way. So he turns himself in, and this entire episode is basically about the trial of Magneto. And let me tell you what, Magneto is him. During this trial of Magneto, there are protesters outside, of course, just upset at the fact that they're giving Magneto a trial to even begin with, and they end up breaking through with a highlight of one person in particular, Carl Denti, also known as the Executioner, who clearly has a plan to take out Magneto. With the protesters and Friends of Humanity breaking through and making their way into the courtroom, it's pretty much up to Storm and Magneto to hold them off. Magneto uses his powers to surround all of the enemies with the help of Rogue, electrifying all of the metal that's surrounding them. However, Carl Denti, again Executioner, is able to get a shot off, which is right at Magneto. However, at the last minute, Storm jumps right in front of it, saves Magneto, but we get the hint that she no longer has her abilities. It is then at that point we see Magneto become the powerful person that he is, and he takes the judges and Executioner and brings them to the upper atmosphere and gives an amazing speech where he says basically that this is the world that you wanted. You wanted to see that this is what's happening. You want to take away all of the powers of my people, and he's showing them that he has the power to crush them right then and there. However, he has decided to take the upper hand and follow in the footsteps of Charles Xavier and try to carry on his overall plan of having humanity and mutants coexist in this world. To me, that whole speech was just, I'm getting goosebumps like right now thinking about it. I'm literally getting goosebumps thinking about it right now. It was such a good speech, so well written, and I think everything so far in these first 2 episodes have been very well written. Right after that, we learn that the UN pardons Magneto, and of course that causes an uproar for other people. But going back to the main reason why Storm and Magneto were the only people able to protect and stop what was going on was because Wolverine had taken Jean to the hospital because she went into labor during all of this, and Rogue ended up bringing Cyclops from the trial to the hospital to be with Jean. And in this, again, I think we see a really cool use of powers. The doctor that was there was not going to help deliver Jean's baby, so Rogue used her powers to siphon his medical expertise and help deliver the baby. And the baby was delivered successfully, and they name him Nathan Charles Summers. Now hold that thought, because there's a specific callback to the comics, which we'll get to in just a second. We go back to the X Mansion, and Beast is examining what shot Storm. He basically says that it seems like she has completely lost her powers. And now we see Storm bonding with Jean again, and Jean now turns her tide and says, Scott and I are not leaving until we help you and figure everything out and get your powers back. That's when we see Storm has left. She has written a letter to the X-Men team, and Jean is reading it. And again, it is a very touching speech. And as Jean is done reading that note, there's a knock at the door. Everyone thinks it might be Storm, and once they open it, it is another Jean Grey. And in fact, it might be the real Jean Grey, whereas the one who gave birth to Nathan Summers might actually be Madeline Pryor, and that is directly taken from the comic books. And to learn more about that, go ahead and check this video out right here. If you made it this far in the video, I truly appreciate it, and if you want to be part of a great Marvel community and you want more Marvel content like this, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below. And until the next video, Excelsior!